Hello and welcome. I'm so excited for today's video cast with Dr. Judith Briles. I have known Judith for many years, and she is one of the most impressive people that I have met in the book world. She has published 31 books, and she is known internationally as the Book Shepherd. And I asked her to come in today so that she can talk to us about all of the things that authors really need to do in order to be seriously successful. So we're going to be talking about what you need to do if you're thinking about writing a book and what you need to do if you are published and not selling very many books. So Judith, welcome.
Well, thank you for having me, Amber.
Well, I want to get started by actually just having you share your story with everybody, because I know that you've had a wildly successful career. You've spoken in front of lots of stages. A lot of people know you. But for those who are new to Judith, why don't you get started by sharing your career with us?
Oh, well, I have a very wide career, from a career in finance, which actually tied into several of the books I wrote, and it really, that first book came from a workshop I gave, and it was only going to be one book, and of course, books breed books. So that book led to another book, and then another book, and then another book, and then another book, and I ran into a hiccup called an embezzlement, and I had a partner steal $1 million from me. So that kind of put us in quite a little spiral, and I went back to school because I had to step in and try to fix a project that she had stolen the money from, and that led to, oh my God, a book. And it became the pioneer book on why women undermine other women. That bred more books, Amber. And then I found myself learning about this thing called niching. And several directors of nursing heard me speak on women and conflict and sabotage and said, you need to do a book just for us. And I thought, oh man, well, I did it. And do I need to do another study? Because I had done multiple national studies on this. And I did another study and was dumbfounded with results, finding that if you worked in healthcare, you had a 42% higher probability of being shafted by a coworker. Well, that opened up a huge market for me. So one of my keepers is the more you niche yourself, the bigger your market is. So for an author, when you're going out, and one of the real stumbles that I see authors perpetually go through is when you ask them who their book for is, oh, I don't know, it's for everybody. No, it's not.
Oh, I hate that.
I know, me too. I mean, you do that when you work with them on the development of their websites. Who is your market? And you have to narrow that down. And so one of the tips I always give is that when you're writing away at your computer, or you're on your yellow pad, or however you put together your words, when you look up who is across from you, who is that perfect person, that buyer of your book that you're writing to and for, who is that? What do they look like? What do they feel like? What are their fears? What are their hopes? What are their concerns? You put together like a little Bible. So when people say, who's your book for? Oh, my book is for, and you know exactly. It is never for everybody. Never, never, never.
I think that so many people do that. You're right. And especially in website development, they do that too. Oh, I worked with men and women and all ages and divorced and married, et cetera, et cetera. But what happens is you end up confusing the marketplace, and then nobody understands really who the book is for, which results in very little sales. So I think that's great advice. And so do authors really just have to sort of figure out who their ideal reader is and then just trust that they're going to get lots of sales if they just approach that market? Is it a trust thing?
Oh, I don't think you have to trust. You have to work your tush off. That's what you have to do. But you have to go to it. You have to reach for it. You have to find their pain. And their pain could be, they want to be entertained. That's for your fiction writer. That they have to reach out, and what's the benefit? The other thing that an author must know, but there's several, but number one is who exactly is the market. Number two is what value do you bring to it? What benefit do you bring to it? So when I was deep diving into healthcare, I got so into it, Amber, that I too could stand in line at a grocery store and I would notice people's veins and think, oh, she's a good stick, you know, because I was so immersed in healthcare. I subscribed to journals. I took more journals than typical people who work in healthcare did, because that's where I went. So I did all my speaking. I did all my reach out. The last 10 years of my writing was exclusively just for healthcare, whether it was on the executive level, whether it was on the educational level. And I got to be known, if we got a toxic player, you know, get Briles in because she will deal with it. So,
No kidding. So
yeah.
let's talk for a minute. If I have this, if I have this feeling like I want to write a book, where do I even begin? Do I just start writing, or is there a process that you suggest new authors to go through?
I think it's really important for all authors to recognize that the more they write, the better they write. The more they read, the better they write. And it's a circle. And it's very important for them to read in their genre. If you're a business writer in leadership, by God, you better be knowing everything that's out there in leadership, because it'll give you great material. It gives you ideas, clues. I also think it's very important to step away. That sometimes we are so embedded in it that we forget that we need to take time out. And a time out may not just be a walk or a bubble bath, which sounds good at times, but it could be going to see an outrageous movie that all of a sudden I found myself in the middle of a movie. That's the missing link. I was like, that's the statement.
Sure.
When I was watching House of Cards with Kevin Spacey, which is a amazing, amazing series that Netflix put together, that a couple of lines came out. It was like, boing! They just jumped at me that I could use, and I could tweak a little bit and own them. They were mine. So you have to give yourself a timeout so you can go in that area. So for any author, a wannabe author, or an author who's coming back for a revisit or a reboot or a makeover, is that it's important to look what's going on out there. I think one of these huge mistakes, Amber, is when I hear people say, well, I never watch TV. Never, 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 never. Oh, for God's sakes.
Really? Okay.
The rest of the world is watching TV. You
True.
need to know what's going on TV and what's attracting you, especially because one of my things is that I am such a huge proponent in speaking about your book, getting out there and moving that book and your expertise, that your audience is watching television. What are they watching? When I talked about sabotage, there was a classic scene from ER that head nurse Carol went through when she was going to go to med school, and the other nurses kind of shafted her and moved her away because she was being uppity in their view and splitting away. I would act it out on the stage. They knew exactly where I was going. There was, when I talk about unwritten rules, I cite examples, and I include and act out a scene from A League of Their Own. My audience repeats verbatim the lines with me. When you do that, you connect. And for authors, our skill is to connect with our reader, whether it's for entertainment, whether it's for solving a problem, whether it's for easing the pain. That's what we must do in our quest.
Wow, powerful. And so when I'm starting out and I want to write this book, and I mean, there's so many different structures for books. So is it really best that we go and talk to a professional and learn about our options, or is there a standard set of options that I can pick from?
I think that's a great question, and I think it's an excellent idea to come and talk to professionals. I'm going to tell people I want them to come to the Author U extravaganza that we do always the first week in May, always, because all of them are going to be there. And there is what I call, there's two big things that have happened in publishing. One is the formation of book pollution, which is now that everybody in the world can publish, and the question is, should they? And the answer is no. That because they don't do it with quality, they don't care enough. And the example I would give you is, if you want to give out a business card, are you going to go on your computer and print it out on very thin paper and you'll just cut them all up and hand them out with people? Or are you going to maybe have it designed a little bit? So maybe there's a little feel to it, a little texture to it, or maybe a little color, a statement that says, I'm quality. And what's happened today with the ability to print anywhere, anytime, anything, is a lot of quality is disappearing. So I have a little bit of a book snob in me. I want to see quality. The other thing is that I think it's actually important. What I love is sitting down with a beginning author, whether we're brand new, just starting the journey, or we're coming back for a new book, and really mapping out a couple of hours. Okay, what's our strategy? What's the book about? Who's our audience? What's the benefit? What resources do we need to bring together? What other players are we going to do it? How are we going to plan our launch when we roll this baby out, whether it's in 4 months, 6 months, next year? So you can go away with what I call a true game plan for your book. Whether I work with them again, be great if I did, but if I don't, at least they've got the core of what they need to go away with. And I think that what they have to be careful with, the other phrase besides book pollution, is the publishing predators. There are more animals out here who are churning, literally churning for the green, and this is going to be the green author, who is very naive, who is seduced, and seduced is the right word. They are seduced into signing up for some package for $597 or $797 or $997, whatever it is, and all of a sudden they are in for $4,997, and then it's $7,997, and then they're getting pitched to $13,997, and they don't know what they're doing. It all sounds good. There's lots of bells and whistles, yet they haven't done their homework. So I think one of the big failure factors for authors today is they have the RTP syndrome, rush to publish.
No kidding.
Yeah, and you see it. You see it all the time.
All
That
the
you're
time.
thinking, I mean, I see books coming in, I'm thinking, what were you thinking? And I have to tell you, in the old days, I would say, oh, it's really nice that you've done a book. Now I say, why did you publish this? And what were you thinking on this? And I will go ahead and rip a book apart. I know it hurts, but that the reality is they are not going to sell any books. And we had a huge discussion on our radio show that we do on Mondays on our open mic, that someone was getting blasted with god-awful reviews. Whose fault is that? Whose fault is that? Number one, they didn't have it edited well. Number two, it was a fiction book, that the arcs were all off Timbuktu. And I said to the author who called in, I said, well, this is constructive criticism. You ask for people to review. You can't complain that they're coming back and they're posting on Amazon negative reviews. I would suggest you pull your book off. You need to have someone professional go through it and see if they can fix it. Almost any book's fixable. It's whether you're willing to make the investment. So for all authors, it starts with, you got to have vision, you got to have passion, and you got to have commitment. And commitment means time, energy, money. And that means you got to, websites are critical. I mean, you and I know that. They're the portal. They're the portal. And for some to say it's just a business card, they are the portal to everything that you're doing. And they have to look good. They have to feel good. They have to be inviting. They have to look contemporary. They have to really think that you care enough about that visitor to come in that they want to stay and hang out. Books are the same thing. The production, the creation, your storyline, your content, what you're giving says, I care enough about you that I want you to be able to not waste your time, but take away what you need to get out of it.
So what are some of the top screw-ups, for lack of a better word, that authors make? Is it just that they're not hiring a good editor? I mean, that is obviously
crucial. That's there. It's like number one. Number one.
What else?
Yeah, there's several screw-ups. Number one. Number two is that they don't use professionals in the cover design. They think, I can use clip art, or I can go to Fiverr. Fiverr would be good.
Oh my gosh.
No. Slap hands. That you can get a decent cover. You should be able to get an excellent cover for under $1,000. You can get a really good cover for $395 to $695. Really, there are a lot of the top designers are out here. The freelancers who work for major book companies actually freelance and going in. So book covers are important. The layout, because here's what's happened. When a book, I'm going to use one of my I have a book that's popping here at the end of this month. Okay, so I have a little. This is Snappy, Sassy, Salty. All right, so Snappy, Sassy, Salty. Wise words for authors and writers. When you see this book in person, it literally looks like this lifts up. It pops at
It's
you.
gorgeous. That is one of the most quality books I have ever put my hands on for sure.
And it's a baby book. It's 4 by 6. So inside, and I will say it's got a little ribbon in it. All right, so you can do it, and it's 250 of my off the wall quotes that I've used over the years, and that one of them 104. Wake up, kick ass, repeat. Don't you love it? I love it. So the thing is, putting it together it's hardback. It's got a dust jacket. It's a very high-end book. It's a gift book. It's a gift book for rewriters and we authors. And that's my target market. That's what we will go to pitch it for, to place it as we move it out here toward the end of the month. But would I design it myself? Are you kidding? I reach out. Do I have designs about ideas of what I want it to look like? Absolutely. And you work with these professionals to bring those about. Another thing I'm going to recommend to all our viewers is that you want to do the book floor test. Here's the book floor test. You go to a brick and mortar bookstore. You do two things. You go to your genre area, whatever your book's in, and then what you do is you just take them all out and lay them on the floor. Now, people are going to think, what are you doing? Mm-hmm. Don't worry about it. And you look, what book pops? Look at the spines as well. Spines are critical. Now, go back to the fresh, newly arrived from New York. You're going to do the same thing. I want you to study all the new books. Don't worry about the genre. What I want you to do is look at the fonts, look at the breadth of the way the titles go, look at what they're using. Are they using images or not images? What's the trend right now? Because you're competing with New York. Whether you are in a bookstore or you're not, other people see these books, and you want to have the integrity for your book that New York puts in for their books. And it doesn't have to break your budget. Okay, so critical. So editing, cover, interior. The RTP, don't rush to publish. If it's not ready, don't do it. It's really important to hold back, to make sure that you bring it together in that. Number 5 is you got to have a game plan. So who's your market? How are you going to reach it? Have you put all the channels together? I have a 15-year-old author we're working with right now, and I gave her a whole bunch of homework to get up, and the kids, she's doing a YA, and the kids are really morphing and going more into Tumblr. Perfect. All right, so you've got to be up on Tumblr and going at that. The Facebook is declining with that group. There's more action going on around Twitter, but Tumblr seems to be their thing. So her assignment was, you start building up, you comment, you have to do a variety of things while we begin to work on her book on our side to kind of fix it up that she's got going on it. And then it's the social media, and people who resist social media, Amber, you might as well go bang your head on the wall. And you heard me say 3 years ago, there is no frickin' way I'm going down this path. And
I remember.
And here I am with my two Twitter channels with over 39,000 followers, active with an extraordinarily active group on LinkedIn. We're now going to be building up the Google Plus Author U group. Mm-hmm. We've really channeled where we think it is easy for us to work with. And move in and get our words out and our information out. So I've had to learn it. I move very fast, and I know at the event I did last August with Judith Briles Unplugged, and I pulled 3 people randomly out of the audience. I brought up my Hootsuite. I went after their URL on Amazon. I wrote a bunch of tweets and a longer description for both Google Plus and Facebook. And in 10 minutes, I know I reached out to a potential, and I did multiple postings, over 1 million possibility of hits. When you get this through your head, that's where your marketing comes in. Social media is the town hall. The internet is the town hall of book marketing. And books fail because so many authors want to gaze into their belly button and just want to write.
Right.
You don't get to do that. Because here's the next mistake. They don't realize when the book is written, it's written. You now move the hat off, new hat comes on, and it says publisher or marketer. And that's the new job. And I don't care if you publish with New York or you publish on your own. You're going to have to be the marketer, the chief marketing officer. So that's why all those social media connections are critical. They're critical. Creating your own groups, creating your following. And you know, the crowd, here's the other thing. People think it's all going to come at once. No.
No kidding. Yep.
Authoring and publishing is a marathon. It is not a sprint. It takes time after time, and those 20 plus miles that you go through, it's like one of my favorite books was called Mastery by George Leonard, and he talked about the value of being on plateaus, the true value of plateauing at times, because when you're on a plateau, you get the opportunity to learn it over and over and over again. And then when you step back on, you go up not one floor, but you may take a leap up 10 floors.
Absolutely.
Sometimes you have to go down a floor, but it's the elevator. You know, it's up and down a little bit, but you will move on up. And I remember seeing Michael Jackson's that movie that was made, the documentary, really after he died. And there was a fabulous scene in there where one of the dancers was just could not get it, and he said, "Stop. This is what practice is about. We just keep practicing until we get it." And so I think for the authoring journey, we need to remember that we're going to stumble, there are going to be mistakes made, but that's the practice, and you learn it. And I know what I know today. I was so naive when I first published my book. My first book was in 1981. I was one of those kept authors, you know, where New York flew you back first class and put you in the Waldorf Astoria, and they limited you there, and they sent you out on these fabulous author tours, and you had escorts everywhere you go. Those days are gone. And you have to learn to be your own escort and your own journey, and you have to figure out, you know, who you need on your team. So one of the big mistakes is we don't recognize who's on our team. And one of the team members need someone who is really blunt and blatant, saying, "What were you thinking?"
i.e. Judith Briles.
One of those. But you also need the Amber Ludwigs, who makes our beautiful websites, and who's a good one in bouncing off things to do. And you need those people on your team. You need someone who gets finance, saying, "Wait a minute, this doesn't make sense. This doesn't make sense." Right. You need someone who's got some product savvy.
So Judith, we are winding down on our time together already. It's amazing how this half hour always goes, but I have a few last questions for you. One, just in a sentence or two or three, about how much should somebody try to save for knowing that they're going to have to invest in their book? What does it cost to write and publish and produce a book? Roughly? Well,
you know, you hate this response. I mean, it depends. So if you are going to do, here's what I'm going to tell someone. If you are on a budget, a real budget, and you're thinking, I'm going to just do a few copies at a time, and I'm looking at like CreateSpace or something like that, which is, you know, you're talking a couple of $100. Here's what I'm going to tell you to do. You must have edit. Here's your must-haves. You must have editing done. Your editing is going to cost, it depends. It's going to depend upon, are we fiction or nonfiction? I've done several cookbooks this last year. I have only one editor I use for cookbook because she will know instantly if I put a tablespoon, you have to put a tablespoon in it, it's not going to work. She will instantly see that. So you have to have eyes on books who get that genre. I will budget anywhere from $1,000 up for editing, depending upon if it is just a copy or if we're getting into content and heavy development. It could be many thousands of dollars, many thousands, if they're going to have to go in and basically rewrite your whole book, which sometimes does happen. And I've had a couple of those Lulus this year. If you're going to have a cover done, we've already thrown out a number. I budget anywhere. I put max $1,000, but I'll budget $500 in, knowing that I've got a little leeway here. If I'm going to have interior design, depends upon the book again. Fiction is much easier. Fiction is much easier versus books that have a lot of call-outs or pull-outs or artwork in them. And artwork could be anything from graphics to photos. So, and the more you have, that's going to cost more because of the layout that's involved in it. But I budget anywhere from, on a layout, on the very low, simple side, of 1,000 to 3,500, depending upon the complications of it. And of course, that takes care of all the corrections. Then, if I'm going on the low side, then I would have my professional cover designer and interior designer, sometimes they're one and the same, do the uploading to a CreateSpace or to a lightning source, and then turn it loose. I would create an Amazon.com/advantage account, so I'm a publisher. I would make sure that I have my right URL, but I am so for the website is critical to come in. That should be all developed corresponding to this, and that you, dear author, are the brand. Don't make your book the brand. Get your book URL, but have it directed to your author page. Because you're going to have other things that come along. And make sure that the branding that your website developer is creating also carries through to that business card. It carries through to your book. I mean, there's going to be elements that should be moving along that people will recognize, oh, that's Judith Briles, or that's Amber Ludwig. They will say instantly, I recognize that. And that's what branding does. Which we'll be doing a branding workshop at the extravaganza. But those are the things that are very important to bring in place. So that would be bare bones: editing, cover, layout, and then use one of those other channels. I mean, Amazon is a massive distributor. Everybody knows who it is. It's like Cheers. It's on the corner. And we can go there. If your game plan is to get into the bookstore, you're going to have to upgrade the quality a little bit, get a better quality printing than what CreateSpace does, because it still is iffy at times, and you can't do a sophisticated cover feel to it. Now you can have a choice between gloss and matte, which is a big improvement. So no longer is it just vanilla; you get chocolate and vanilla.
Gotcha.
But you would do that. Then there's other elements that you can go to. I would always be careful with any pay-to-publish operation, which means they're not the publisher. Get this: they're not the publisher. They are a really pay-to-print operation. And who do they use to do that? They're printing, usually lightning source. And you see, if you can figure out, my game thing, Amber, is that if you will figure out that these cover designers are available, wonderful designers, the layout people are available, copy editors are available to help you write your copy so you have a marketing appeal for that back cover, which is critical. They're all there and available. It's a few $100s here, a few $100 there, maybe a little bit over 1,000 here, but you will have a product. You need to understand, the publisher hat now is on. I have a product. Now I have to go out and support and market my product.
Absolutely. Well, I know that we are hitting you hard and fast with information here, and there is so much more that we can talk about. And I'm going to ask you one last question, Judith, but before I do, I just want to make sure that the viewers know that below this video, we're going to have links to both of Judith's websites. We have thebookshepherd.com, which is really her author, speaker, mentor website, where she can coach you on your book. She can help you with editing. She can be your go-to resource for any of these things that we're talking about today. And then she also has authoru.org, which is more of an author community where she has live events happening all the time, lots of different training opportunities, including what she's mentioned a couple of times, the Author U Extravaganza, which will be held in Denver in early May. And I'm actually getting the pleasure to speak on the big stage about websites for Judith and her audience. But the Author U Extravaganza is a must. If you are serious about your success in being an author, there's no conference like it. It was fantastic last year, and I strongly encourage you, we'll put the links below, to go check out the Extravaganza, and you can have some real FaceTime with both Judith and myself at that event. But Judith, the last question I want to ask you is that if I have a goal to sell, let's say, 10,000 copies of my book, what are some things that I need to be thinking about right now in order to move in that direction?
The most critical thing, besides the points we've come out, creating a quality book, you need to know who your crowd is and who your audience is, and you have to be on the channels where they are. the social media channels. You also have to really look at if you're going to be using, for example, I use my mouth to move most of my books. You know, I was speaking on the platforms, and so went through and I knew which associations I was the right fit for. I knew which groups I was the right fit for, and I absolutely knew who I was the wrong fit for, which is a critical point to know. Don't try to connect with everyone, to speak to everyone. You're not going to sell 10,000 books through, most likely through bookstores. You're going to do it through alternatives. And the alternatives are getting information up. You have to have a very well-designed website with information that they trust you. It builds trust in those relationships with the content that they can come back with. And you're putting out a lot of really good information that they want to hear about and connect with you and move along that way. So you become the go-to expert. So if, like I mentioned in healthcare, when people had a toxic employee, they got me in, and I always said, do you want the 5-minute solution or the $40,000 one? And I told them, here's the 5-minute, here's the 40,000. You choose. You choose. So you become the go-to expert to move those books, and it's a positioning. We've had several authors this last year who have moved well in excess of 10,000 books. They have mostly done it online because they have reached out to their channels. One was a cookbook, one was a healthcare book, and one was a fiction book. You know, over 10,000. Now, is that a number you should aspire to? Sure. What's the average mid-list book sell for from New York? Or sell amount? 5,000 lifetime.
Wow.
5,000 lifetime. So one of the things that you can all do is you set up your books. I started pre-selling the book 6 months before it was available to the public. I'd get the buzz going. Here it comes. It's coming. It's going to solve the problem. It's going to tickle your fancy. It's going to do whatever it's going to do. Take their money, put it aside, and guess what? It'll pay for your entire print run. That's a happy day.
Wow.
And so you understand the dollars and cents. It was always my strategy that I knew if I pre-sold 400 to 500 books, I had basically sold and paid for my entire print run, which was running $7,000 to $8,000. So.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm really grateful that you took the time out of your very busy schedule, Judith, to, so we could introduce you to our network. And you're going to be hearing a lot more from Judith because on our next Summit for Charity, Judith is going to be one of our featured speakers as well. And we're really going to take a deep dive even more into everything that she has to say. But I just for now want to really thank you for your time. Be sure to take a minute and leave a comment below sharing your top takeaway from today's interview, as well as asking any questions that you have. And I'll be sure to reply, as always, to give you that extra value add and help us share this interview on social media. And looking forward to our next live video cast next week. And Judith, I just want to thank you again for your time today. It was great.
Well, thank you for having me, Amber. We'll see you soon.
Okay. Till then, everyone.